Bet365 for the win. It's a beautiful home for the beautiful game, and we are starting the program right away today. Match day -2 in beautiful British Columbia. We'll have Christian Jack joining us from the Seawall, Gareth Wheeler and Jordan Wilson on the program today as well. KJ, you are fresh off of Canada training, match day -2, as I mentioned. A question I asked you yesterday, a question I'm going to ask you today, probably tomorrow as well, my friend. What's the latest on the captain, Alphonso Davies?
Well, it's been a spectacular Tuesday here. I was awake before 6 o'clock and the sun was already up, and it hasn't left us yet as of taping this show here on this match day -2 ahead of Canada's game against Qatar here in Vancouver on Thursday. Just to give you a little bit of a timeline, we're often invited to training at the University of British Columbia for Canada approximately about 10:30 local. We were pushed back today by 30 minutes. Canada actually had their picture day where they had the entire players and staff out there for their official World Cup team photo. When we're eventually allowed into training, as many people now know, we're given the first 15 minutes to access that kind of footage, take some photos and observe of what we want from that session. That was approximately around about 11:15 this morning, and during that time, Canada Soccer's media representative told us at that moment an update on some of their injured players, including Alfie Jones, who was given a little bit of a personal day. He was there in trainers, but not in a boot, not in his boots, obviously getting some, looks a little bit of a recovery day from him. But then came the bomb, or maybe not the bomb. Alphonso Davies no longer in return to play protocol, or is he? They could not get a confirmation on that. So what was not necessarily a story suddenly became a story, because Alphonso Davies has been in return to play protocol. That's the status that they give on these players every single time we go to training, every day at the beginning of this World Cup. But today they could no longer confirm or deny. So an unusual, ambiguous response from Canada Soccer. I then asked them directly in front of about 80 members of the media, can we now report that he is no longer in it? And they did not confirm or deny either. So Alphonso Davies is the story, whether he's going to play or not. And we talked to some of the players who were made available to us about Alphonso after training.
Yeah, Alphonso's so important. He's the best player in our region, and yeah, we're excited that he's here. We're excited that he's getting a lot better and progressing really well. So if you can add him onto the pitch, you know, that's an X factor that any team in the world's going to take.
I don't know if he can play. I mean, he hasn't been training with us, as you guys know. So, I mean, but what I can say he can bring to the team, he can bring his leadership, which is very important for us. Obviously, you guys know Fonzie better than me. He's probably the best dribbler in this competition. He can play as a left back, as an inverted winger, as a winger, up top. I mean, he can do everything. And when he plays, it opens up everything for us. So, I mean, hopefully he can get back as quick as possible. I don't know when that is, but we're going to try to make sure that he plays this tournament.
I'm not a medical expert, so I'll leave that to them, and I'll leave that to Jesse. But we all know what Fonzie brings in terms of his experience, the pace, just his ability to stretch the game, and obviously brings another level of star power as well to the team. And it's a chess piece that a lot of teams have to, you know, divert a lot of attention to dealing with him, because he can honestly dominate a game single-handedly down that one flank. So, look, if we can get him back, it'd be just a massive kind of boost for us. But at the same time is that we're still prioritizing his fitness and his health. I know what it's like coming back from a hamstring. It's one of those ones you can't take shortcuts. So I think that we're going to try and make the best medical decision, but I know at the same time he's desperate to play for us.
Canada Soccer under Jesse Marsh, 32 matches, 2,880 minutes. Alphonso Davies, 1,000 exactly, just under 35%. So whether he plays or not in the next game, one thing's for sure, Jordan and Gareth, Canada Soccer have got a lot of recency from the fact that they don't have to necessarily rely on Alphonso Davies. But whether they liked it or not, the players had to talk about him today. Their captain still TBD in terms of what's going forward and whether he's available. But if you read between the lines, probably unlikely, but maybe a substitute for Thursday against Qatar.
From RTP to TBD, Gareth Wheeler, would you risk it? I know you don't have access to the medical information, but just as we get closer to the game, I know you're having this thought swirl in your head.
Well, forget TBD. I was thinking WTF today when all this was transpiring, because if there's look, I get gamesmanship. I understand how it works. I understand why it happens. And oftentimes I advocate for it. But at a time like this, in a World Cup with your captain, Alphonso Davies, the track record that he has gone through, the issues with his agent, the issues with Bayern Munich, if there was one player I would be deliberate in my messaging about, it would be Alphonso Davies. So I'm not quite sure what this is all about, whether it's to protect the player, whether it's to keep the opposition guessing, thinking, I guess. I'm just not really sure what you get out of this by not being deliberate in your messaging. So, look, the last thing that you want is all the players at camp today asking questions about Alphonso Davies when definitively a must-win game is ahead. So, in my personal opinion, I think this situation could be dealt with much better. And I think that we will eventually learn whether this tactic pays off or not. If Alphonso Davies plays and is healthy and everything moves along merrily, then so be it. I just think that this is an unnecessary distraction. And it's the last thing that Davies or anyone needs right now is any kind of deception. Look, the messaging might be clear behind the scenes, Adam, but public perception matters here when it's a player of the magnitude of Alphonso Davies with what he's already experienced.
One Soccer on location, Christian Jack in Vancouver, powered by General Mills. KJ, aside from Coy, how would you describe the mentality of the Canadian players? We know, especially those who've been able to be in these match day -1 and 2 environments, that although it's not the day before the game, match day -2, very important for the preparation in these tournaments.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, we talked a lot on this World Cup about last Friday's game being a game that they could win, and now it feels like this is a game that they have to win, right? We all know the scenarios within the group stages. And I think what comes down to this is what I wanted to talk to them particularly about today was their mentality. You know, they've done a lot of good things under Jesse Marsch, and they've become a very difficult team to beat. The next step now is becoming that team that knows how to win. And I think they know how to win certain games, but that doesn't mean that you truly know how to win, that mentality of true killers. And I thought Alistair Johnson was the right person to ask that. He's been at Celtic now and consistently winning trophies. He won again the double this year in Scotland, and that team is the example for me of what it truly takes to feel like what it means to win. Is what Alistair told me about trying to take that next step and getting Canada towards that mentality.
Yeah, it's a tough one to put into words. I'd say it really is something that's built on having experience doing it. It's not something that you can, kind of fake that confidence. And it's something that not only does it just boost your team, but it affects the other team as well. They can sense it. There's a level of confidence and almost a sense of inevitability that, there is going to be a goal that's going to happen in the last minute. And you can almost see it in the other team's eyes as well, that they almost feel it's coming as well. So, look, I thought that we actually, in that Bosnia match, we were in the ascendancy and we had chances. But yeah, you're probably right. If we just had that little bit more of that kind of killer instinct, maybe we find a way to get a winner there. And we're sitting on 3 points going to the second group stage game. But look, we're still building towards that. That's something that every single team in the world wants to be. Have that winning mentality. And we've still got a long way to go with that in terms of, we look at this group. We're such a talented group, but we still haven't won any trophies or anything. So we're still building towards that. And look, these tournaments are the best time to go out and show that. And I think we showed that in Copa America, that when we're at it and, we're playing at our best and, we're such a deep team now, the guys coming off the bench as well, that we can put fear into pretty much any team in the world. So we need to get back to that. Ideally, we'll show that again on this week coming up here against Qatar.
As usual, a very thoughtful answer and a thorough answer from Alistair. Just fascinating for me, Jordan, that you could see it from a player point of view, that he actually admits what the next steps are. And also, as a player, I'd love to hear your thought of it. He could sense it playing for Celtic when the other team's playing against him, that he already knows when they're even not winning, that they're in their heads. And I think that's something for Canada to look at, whether they can get that lead early and have that psychological advantage to becoming a winner when it's needed here on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm so curious to what you feel about this, KJ, and what you're noticing being there live in the flesh. Is like what comes to mind to me or for me is you think about Nations League finals, which you were at, right, against the U.S., don't show up or don't play their best, don't get the win that they kind of need. Then we go Nations League again, a must-win game when you're playing Mexico, and Mexico were far better on the day. Basically what I'm trying to say to you, KJ, Thursday feels like a cup final to me. It feels like a day just for the nation, but to put this team in the trajectory and in the place that they need to be to say, hey, we are those guys now. And maybe you're seeing a little bit of pressure. You're seeing like the vibe in camp, but you talk about mentality. I just want to know, do we feel good about this? Do they feel good about going against Qatar and knowing what's on the line for the match? Because we can get into scoring. We can get into all these intricacies about the game. But what is the vibe right now, and how do you feel looking at this? Because for me, it feels like a crossroads, a must-win, have to get the vibes right. And I just want to know, do you feel like this team is ready for it to take this next level?
Yeah, I do feel like that. But again, it's one of those you got to show us moments. No, as you mentioned, some of the examples in the past. Those moments in the past, they have come across certainly regional, some of the Goliaths in that region. No disrespect to their opponent on Thursday. And if people think it is, I apologize. But this is a game and a team that they should be beating and they should be winning. Absolutely. And I think that internally they believe that as well. You know, it was 8 years ago this week that Canada were given this World Cup. And at that moment, Canada were ranked 80th in the world. At that moment, people thought, okay, they are another Qatar. They are another South Africa. They're getting a place in a World Cup simply by the fact that you get the right to host it. And this team has spent the last 8 years demanding more and expecting more and suddenly building their reputation up to get a game like this, to now have a game against Qatar because of the advantage that they have by having the fact that they're a host nation. So, yes, I think internally they absolutely believe they can go out and win, and they should.
Well, KJ, that's the what and the why of this match against Qatar. But what about the how? How do they approach it? How do they accomplish these goals?
Well, there's a couple of things for me from that. We've talked a lot about the World Cup so far and some of the teams who were surprising, and a lot of the clean sheets that have come out of that where teams have been very difficult to break down. And belief is one that you don't want to be giving the opponents. You know, there's a feeling that Qatar shocked Switzerland and maybe you'd be a bit more wary of them. I also subscribe to the feeling that maybe they've had their World Cup moment and maybe they don't need it anymore and they can't necessarily get that again. So when I spoke to the players today, here's some of the players that we spoke to on that kind of approach that they need to take going into this crucial second game of the group stage.
I think it's the fact that everybody knows that, you know, this is a matter of life or death for us. Obviously, when we are competing, we're just not here to spend our times. We want to win. We want to make history like we did against Bosnia, which was very important to make that first point. And this second game is as much as important because it's the first opportunity we have to go after the win and make history again. Obviously, that doesn't consume us. We have to do what we do best, which is be ourselves. But at the same time, we know that every game in this World Cup is very hard. So we're going to be warriors Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's just being very good in both boxes, which that's what we plan to be on Thursday. You know, making sure that in the defensive third we're taking care of things. Anything we've seen from last game that we need to improve, we will improve, and then just moving forward into the other box where last game I think we created a number of chances, really good chances that we should have scored. That when we get this game, we're going to put them away.
It's about us ideally dictating the game with the ball, but also being aware of that this team is fine to hit you on a counterattack and have the individual talent to be able to put moments together as we saw against Switzerland. You know, even that last 10 minutes of the game, Switzerland were up 1-0, but you know, Qatar were getting some counterattacks. They were definitely growing into the game, and they never felt out of it. And that's something that, you know, you have to be impressed with. It's a really good Swiss team. But Qatar never, you know, felt like they were defeated. And obviously ended up getting that equalizer at the very end with a center back going all the way up. So again, there's just little things that we have to take in consideration that, you know, potentially if you're up late, you know, might have center backs coming in and you know, making the box late in the game. So that's things that we're looking at. But it's ideally going to be a game where we're going to be able to dictate the tempo of the game, play on our terms. And yeah, I think it's one of those games that you need to find a way to score early, ideally, to really open them up, because otherwise they've shown that if they're in a game and it's tight, they're really comfortable defending deep and being able to hit you on the counterattack.
Some really interesting tidbits there, as Alistair Johnson alluded to. Score early, Stefan Eustáquio. We need to be warriors. Remember this, back to my advantage point. Over the years, in the 96 years of the competition, 65%, that's the win percentage of host nations in the group stages. And that's a big number on the side of Canada again. Only two teams have never won one of their first two group games. South Africa in 2010, Qatar in 2022. The only two teams never to reach the second round of the World Cup. Canada don't want to be on that list, and if they win on Thursday, they won't be.
Okay, KJ, I'm certainly not a mathematician, but even I can do. They lost the first. They have to win each of their last two games to maintain that historical average and hit 66%. We thank you for joining us from Vancouver, KJ, powered by General Mills, One Soccer on Location. We'll chat with you soon, my friend.